It's about time for another Simone Fontecchio update, as we love to do on this channel. It used to be once a month, but with the season closing down and the Pistons being nowhere near playoff waters, the news just kind of died down. But he finally got paid. Kinda. We're going to talk about that and how he kind of fits into the Pistons game plan, ironically enough, and how sorely he is missed by the Utah Jazz fandom in this one. And with that being said, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into this one. Fontecchio is a 28-year-old player in the NBA. He technically had his rookie season in the league a year before that with the Utah Jazz starting out when they signed him to a 2-year deal. Eventually, they did end up trading him at this most previous deadline, and they sent him to what was equivalently the basketball purgatory of the league, the Detroit Pistons, who have had Cade Cunningham and Garbaggio alongside him. There has been nothing pleasant there. They tied the all-time loss record at one point in the season, and things just did not look up. But with Fontecchio's arrival, things started to get a little bit brighter. His usage went up, as a matter of fact, and because he is the player that he is and his skill set is so coveted in today's league, he found his way into an advanced deal. Now, it was my understanding that originally the reason why he ended up getting dealt was because the Jazz didn't want to pay him going into next year. And I do understand, considering that there's more of a heavier rebuild kind of in place, but it kind of made me sad because they got him back for a bargain if you're a Detroit Pistons fan. Fontecchio averaged 10.5 points to go along with 3.7 rebounds across 66 games this year between the Jazz and the Pistons, and shot 46% from the field and 40.1% from three. Those numbers with the Pistons specifically after the trade deadline increased to 15.4 points and 4.4 rebounds, while playing in a total of 16 games in his larger role that involved him playing 30.3 minutes. Overall, his field goal percentage increased up to 47.9% and his three-point percentage went up to 42.6%. Simply put, he was a much better player than he was with the Jazz, and not even much better. He just had the opportunity to play and showcase his skill set more than he was on the Jazz, because he was not the first, second, or probably third option on the roster. And he was also capable of showing just how well-rounded his game is, and a lot of people actually didn't realize that. They ended up bagging him for 2 years, $16 million, which has me feeling some sort of way, because for his production and his capabilities, that's a steal, if I do say so myself. And I'm sure that Jazz fans would all agree with me from the fact that when we had him in the lineup, we enjoyed some of our best basketball over the past 2 seasons, and his shooting and defensive prowess was actually very much coveted and something that we were missing coming into this offseason. He ended up being a surprisingly good defender after the first year in the league, kind of struggling, dealing with certain injuries, and just not having the necessary feel for the game to allow him to be the most successful. But came into this season, really balled out, got traded at the deadline, and ended up getting a contract that will guarantee him more years in the league to come, which I love for him. Putting that into context, we have to understand what else the Pistons have done and why this move was made. First of all, they ended up firing Monty Williams after they forced him essentially to come join them with the amount of money that they were going to accept giving him. And then they hired JB Bickerstaff. Acceptable move, not the craziest thing, but acceptable. They then decided to ink Tobias Harris to a 2-year, $52 million deal. Then they added Malik Beasley from the Bucks on a 1-year deal. Great three-point shooting. I love that. That's a sneaky good pickup. Pretty solid defender, but that three-point shooting is chef's kiss. Traded for Wendell Moore Jr. Also traded for Tim Hardaway Jr. for Quentin Grimes. And that's an interesting one because that does add a little bit of creation off of the bench. I don't think that you're having a world where Tim Hardaway Jr. starts. They also had to re-ink Cade Cunningham to an extension that was for 5 years, upwards of $220 million, which I heavily endorse because he was the best player on the team. He is the face of that Detroit franchise, and while he has looked like he's aged a million years since the whole thing started, you got to pay the piper. Combine that with the fact that they ended up re-signing Fontecchio and then also signing Paul Reed after he cleared the books from the 76ers, and you have a really solid offseason if you're the Pistons front office. Surprisingly so. They're not going to be a great team next year, but they'll be bearable to watch if you are a Pistons fan or if you just happen to be a team playing the Pistons. It won't be a complete behind whooping that gets put on national television at any point in the year. The most important part of Fontecchio's game that I would like to point out is obviously his three-point shooting. Yes, he did manage to shoot 44% on three-pointers after All-Star break, but he also managed to do this while shooting over 75 total attempts, when, mind you, almost all of those games came during that 16-game stint with the Detroit Pistons. That ranked him as 10th in the league with players that qualified having shot 75 three-point attempts or more during that stretch of basketball. And that's not to say that he should be expected to carry that into next year, and while it would be lovely if he could, I did notice that he ended up having to get surgery on one of his toes, so he's going to be recovering, but he should be good to go in the upcoming weeks as well. Overall, the roster looks as following for that team. You'll have Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Marcus Sasser, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Wendell Moore Jr., Ron Holland, Asor Thompson, Simone Fontecchio, Tobias Harris, Bobby Clintman, Jalen Duran, Isaiah Stewart, as well as Paul Reed. That's not a terrific team, but it's a heck of a lot better than what they had last year. And it makes me feel a little bit envious as a cover of mostly Utah Jazz basketball, because it's been the fans poking the front office as the dead fish in a photo with a stick, hoping them to do something and just praying that they do something, because nothing has happened. There's been a lot of rumors about trades involving several players, but nothing has occurred. Now, there was a really good draft where a lot of players ended up being steals and were not supposed to be available when the Jazz ended up picking. And so you have the likes of Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, and Kyle Filipowski all on the same team and all having the ability to thrive on a rebuilding franchise that's hoping to use a lot of young talent to bolster their ranks. It is unfortunate that Simone Fontecchio will not be able to push those boys to the next stage, because I felt like as a wing player, not only as a defender, but as a shooter, he was everything that you want on a championship caliber team for a tertiary or a fourth place kind of role player star on any particular roster. If you're looking for somebody in today's league that can help complement the main pieces of the roster, you want to make sure that you have a guy that has, number one, shooting touch. You need three-point balls to fall, because if they're not falling, it's going to be a long night in today's league. Combine that with elite borderline defense at times and really good defense just in general, and you have a guy that's extremely reliable. Not to mention, he comes from the EuroLeague basketball circuit, so he understands what it's like to be a system player, what it's like to be a role player, and more importantly than that, when to pass the ball when you know you're not hitting. There are so many players across the league where they will shoot the ball, whether they're hot, whether they're cold, it does not matter. But Fontecchio recognizes if he doesn't have the shot he wants, if his shot hasn't been falling, he's not about to give you an 0 for 10, 1 for 12 type shooting night from three-point lands. It will never happen. If he sees himself go 0 for 4, he might hesitate on the fifth, and if there's a better pass available to lead to a shot, he's going to swing the rock, and that's something that you need. If you're the Detroit Pistons, you love this because your main player doesn't have to have the ball taken out of his hands to allow other people to thrive, because Fontecchio was a great catch and shooter. But if Cade Cunningham does swing the ball his way, or Jaden Ivey swings the ball his way, and somebody else ends up being open, say the likes of hint, a Malik Beasley, that's an extra pass that Fontecchio will be willing to make, instead of missing that shot knowing that it won't go in, or being heavily contested and still jacking that shot up. The key to the game these days, a lot of times, is going to be unselfishness. And I think that the Pistons are building in the correct direction. And while they will not be ready to contend over these next couple of years, just yet in my eyes at least, I think that Fontecchio is going to be a big piece in that growing culture of winning basketball as opposed to losing basketball. But you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. How much do you enjoy watching Fontecchio play? Did you think that he was a big deal to begin with, or is this your first time hearing about him? If you're a Pistons fan, how do you feel about coming into next season with the roster changes that you have made? Let me know in the comments below. That being said, it's your boy Ray Toops. Go ahead and like the video, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and become a member to help support the content. And like always, good morning, good evening, and good night, no matter where you're on the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.